designing the world's most trusted driver, Waymo and the future of inclusive mobility. Speakers: Aaron Lai, Senior Product Manager with Waymo; Eamon Completano, Senior Safety Researcher, Waymo; Lucas Watson, Senior Software Engineer with Waymo; and moderator Sven Biker, PhD, founder, Silicon Valley Mobility.
Being independent has been a big struggle for me, and I think for most blind people, I really don't get to experience a lot of independence in my daily life, especially when it comes to transportation. So for me, finding Waymo and having this independence that I've just never had before, it's been the most freeing feeling ever.
I lost my sight when I was 25 years old. Giving up driving was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do.
A really significant challenge of being blind is the issue of transportation, because I can't drive. I need to rely on others for that basic requirement of life.
I started relying on rideshare options, and the biggest downside is service denial. I would have a service dog with me, and the drivers would drive right by me because they saw the dog.
Hundreds of times a day in the United States, drivers don't want to pick up a guide dog, strictly against the law, and they cancel a ride. An autonomous vehicle will never cancel a ride with a guide dog.
A woman and her guide dog, followed by a man and his guide dog, each climb into the backseat of separate Waymo vehicles.
When I got in a Waymo for the first time by myself, I felt like I was driving again.
30 feet to your left.
A rider holds her phone with the Waymo One app open, integrated with screen reader capabilities and assistive audio cues, as the Waymo vehicle pulls up to the curb.
Just get on the app, tell it what to do. There's nobody else that you have to negotiate with. It was so exciting to have that feeling back of independence.
It's really powerful that Waymo has allowed us to kind of look under the hood as they're developing this new technology.
Waymo, in particular, understands and values the fact that we have something to contribute, and Waymo has something to contribute, and that makes it a true partnership.
The steering wheel turns by itself as a Waymo turns a corner in San Francisco.
And 24 years ago, this technology didn't exist. In fact, when I first lost my vision, I remember sitting in my driveway behind the wheel of my car just crying because of the independence that I had lost. I could never imagine something that I could just go so freely and jump into. Now I can't imagine life without a Waymo.
It can open a lot of doors, not just practically, not just, oh, let me go shopping, but also emotionally. Also like, okay, I'm not dependent, I'm not reliant, I'm not a burden on somebody else. I'm my own person, I can do my own thing. It's a new sense of liberation. That's why it's so special. It's about freedom.
Partnering to build a future with safer, more accessible transportation. The Waymo logo appears, followed by the logos of World Blind Union, Lighthouse for the Blind, and Visually Impaired SF, Arizona Council of the Blind, Foundation Fighting Blindness, Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, California Council of the Blind, Braille Institute, National Federation of the Blind, Foundation for Blind Children, Avista Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Blinded Veterans Association, American Foundation for the Blind, and American Council of the Blind.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a discussion designing the world's most trusted driver, Waymo and the future of inclusive mobility. I am Sven Biker, and I'm delighted to be the host for this exciting discussion. A special thank you also goes to SciTech Global for the opportunity to bring this important discussion to our audience today. Before we dive into it, let's see actually who will be discussing this important matter with us today. And for this, I would like to invite our great panelists here to say a little bit more about what they do at Waymo. Aaron, maybe we start with you.
Awesome. Hi, my name's Aaron, and I'm a product manager working on the perception team at Waymo.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Eamon, tell us a little bit more about what you do at Waymo.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Eamon. I'm a senior safety research engineer at Waymo, and my background is in biomechanics, so I think about the ways in which people can get injured, both inside the vehicle and outside the vehicle, and how we can protect them as best we can.
Great. Thanks very much, Eamon. Lucas, tell us a little bit more about your background and what you do at Waymo.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas. I work on the motion planning team, and I focus on the car's behavior around pedestrians.
Very cool. So a lot of knowledge that we're bringing here to the discussion about self-driving autonomous vehicles and what Waymo does. And I assume that many of our viewers and listeners are familiar somewhat with self-driving cars because I observe that they are really becoming mainstream. But before we talk more about how they work and so on, let's talk a bit more about the benefits. So why are we doing this? So what are some of the benefits of autonomous vehicles? Lucas, maybe right out of the bat, how would you describe it?
So, some of the benefits are we are able to see in all directions all the time. We're able to see in the dark with our various different sensors, and we're able to pay attention to all these things all at once and keep our attention on everything. And as we developed the Waymo driver, we ran many lifetimes of driving in simulation, and then that continued to play out in the real world, where our safety record has been demonstrated over 100 million plus miles that we've driven now.
Great. Wow, that's a lot of miles. I mean, I'm just wondering about this, how many miles I drive in my vehicle and multiply this with whatever 300 million population maybe in the US. So it's very impressive. I don't know, Eamon, and anything from your vantage point, how would you frame the benefits of autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Lucas hit on, the roadway safety elements of it. But I think the other crucial part is what I would describe more as like personal safety or rider comfort. Right, I think we've all gotten into, whether it be a taxi or a ride-sharing vehicle. Maybe the vehicle's dirty, the driver is driving erratically or something like that. With the Waymo driver, there's no driver in the front seat. All the vehicles are the same, so you're getting that same experience, which really adds to your feeling of personal comfort and privacy. And then I think specifically for the community, the members of our disabled community here, we think about whether there's either outright discrimination from some of these drivers who might refuse to give someone a ride if they have a guide dog or a cane or some other mobility assist, or hostility. They might begrudgingly accept that ride, versus the Waymo. You can call it. There's no driver to discriminate against you. It will wait for you to get into the vehicle, as well as some additional features that we have on the vehicles, like indicating to other roadway users that the Waymo is stopped to pick up a rider or drop off a rider, or halting for a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Some of these additional safety features that are I think overlooked in the day-to-day aspects that Waymo does offer.
Yeah, that is really amazing, Eamon, and I really appreciate these perspectives regarding the inclusive mobility. And now it really all makes sense that a self-driving driverless vehicle provides really a different kind of mobility. So that is really great. But I wonder how does it actually work? I don't know if any of you can walk us through it in simple terms, how these vehicles work. And from my own driving experience, I mean, I care about where am I, what is around me, what might happen next, and where am I supposed to go. Is that also how a Waymo vehicle works? I don't know, Lucas, Aaron, if that's maybe something that you can enlighten us.
Yeah, I can handle maybe the first two parts of the way you propose that, which I think is a great way to break it down. So where am I? This is actually a process we call localization. And so the Waymo driver uses a pretty detailed 3D map, GPS, and its own sensors to pinpoint its location as it drives. So you can think of it almost as a very accurate GPS system that double checks its locations with its landmarks as it's driving around. In terms of what's around me, so this is what we call perception. And this is really about understanding everything in the vicinity of the driver. So we have a suite of sensors that act as our eyes and ears. You can think of cameras as being like our eyes, LiDARs, which as being sort of bat echolocation, but with lasers, and radar, which uses radio waves. And so the Waymo driver fuses input data from all these sensors together to generate a very rich 360-degree view of the environment. And we're able to identify different objects, their speeds, and their directions. And I think from this point forward, I'll hand it off to Lucas to answer the next two questions.
Yeah, Lucas, bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah, so once we know about everyone around us and we see the world, we want to predict what's going to happen next. We see all these other road users and we want to think about, do they have the green light? Is that pedestrian going to try to cross? What's the cyclist trying to do? Are they trying to turn? Are they going to stay next to me? And that all helps us inform what the Waymo driver actually decides to do next. Do we need to react to another road user that, we think is suddenly going to be in front of us? Or, how should we behave to make sure we're comfortable when we're interacting with a pedestrian or cyclist?
Great. Hey, Aaron, so you talked about, if I followed this correctly, like 3 different kinds of sensors. I think you mentioned cameras and LiDAR, which is laser-based, and radar, which is like, well, what many people maybe have heard about what radar is, being used on ships and aircraft. And so a Waymo vehicle seems to be using all 3 of those in tandem. Is that something that helps you in particular, maybe challenging situations? Like, driving in the fog, with my 2 eyes, if I need to add my ears to drive in fog, that's obviously not a great solution, not recommended to drive by hearing only. But walk us through these 3 key sensors. How do they work together, in particular in situations where a human driver really wouldn't be up to the task?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Sven. So ultimately, as you mentioned, our cameras, LiDARs, and radars do all work together in concert through a process we call sensor fusion. And as to why we do this, it's because each sensor type has strengths that can really compensate for any potential weaknesses and the others depending on like what day we're driving, time of day, driving conditions, and so on. So for example, let's say we're driving in dense fog. Well, camera visibility and LiDAR performance actually can both be impacted by dense fog. Camera visibility, like you said, similar to our eyes, we can't really see through it. LiDAR can actually be scattered by fog. However, radar cuts through fog and also rain, kind of like hot knife through butter. So that's actually great redundancy for the Waymo driver there. So we are able to use all 3 signals together to detect pedestrians and vehicles and so on in foggy conditions. Similarly, when we're driving at night, cameras perform less well in darkness. LiDAR, in contrast, actually creates its own light through laser pulses and is unaffected. So that's where LiDAR helps, where camera might be insufficient in that case. Ultimately, I'd say sensor fusion, these 3 sensors together, are what really empowers the Waymo driver to safely navigate any difficult weather or lighting conditions that could impede a single sensor type. And this is not even mentioning benefits when, let's say, sensor hardware might fail. So in that case, we have other sensors to make up the gap. We actually also do have our own ears on the Waymo driver, which we call external audio receivers, which also stands for ear. And this helps our driver understand situations like maybe active emergency vehicle sirens as well.
Wow, that's a lot, and I hadn't thought about it. Sure, you need to listen to an emergency vehicle, whether that's a police car or a first responder or what have you. That's quite a bit. And then I wonder, I know my daily driving, my daily commute, and I basically know what to anticipate and so on. But then there are these situations that are new, that are unusual, and where I get scared as a driver, where I might certainly get out of my routine. And I wonder how a pre-programmed, what I would think, a pre-programmed automobile like a Waymo responds to this. Like, let's say a pedestrian that behaves erratically. So how does a Waymo maybe use its own experience, if it has anything like this, to really challenge these or navigate these challenging situations that it has never encountered before? Is there any like long-time learn from one situation to be better the next time? Anything? I don't know if that's Aaron, Lucas, whoever wants to shed some light on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can answer some of the planning aspects of that. And one of the big answers is we leverage machine learning to take all of that data of all those diverse experiences that the Waymo driver has seen, and uses that to inform how can we better predict and react to those interactions in the future. So again, we've driven many human lifetimes of driving. We've seen things that only happen on the road maybe once in a million miles of driving, things that you or I would never see as a human driver, or hopefully would not see. And that really allows us to have confidence that when the Waymo driver sees those really rare events on the road, that we're confident that our reaction and road safety is very good.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess to add on to that, like Lucas mentioned, we've driven tons of miles, in fact, more than 2 million miles per week. And so as a result, we see a lot of those weird or novel, unusual situations that a human driver might never experience, just given pure volume. So for example, let's say we see a pedestrian in a chicken costume approach our car. We can automatically log this and flag it for review by our experts. We'll then look at the sensor data to really understand how our system perceived the pedestrian in this costume, how it predicted the person would then move, and then we always decompose how our Waymo driver reacted. Ultimately, I think what really sets us apart is that we're able to add it to our simulation set, where crucially, we can create tons of variations of this in other events. So what if the pedestrian arrived earlier? What if they were moving slower or faster? And ultimately, we've been able to simulate tens of billions of miles to help improve our performance over time. And depending on the kind of situation, we're actually also able to replicate challenging situations through closed course testing. So for example, with a fog or rain tunnel, with dummies, we're able to really replicate long tail, very rare cases that human drivers might not ever see. I think ultimately it's really about a cycle of continuous learning where the more we drive, the more unique situations we're able to encounter, the more examples we have to refine and really improve the Waymo driver. And I'd say that this data-driven approach has really been fundamental for us to be able to interact safely and responsibly with pedestrians.
Wow. So, and is it safe to say it's really a collective learning? So let's say if vehicle number 53, if that exists, vehicle number 53 encounters something, vehicle number 278 actually gets the same experience because it's shared across the street. Unlike actually when I drive my vehicle, I don't really learn from the mistakes that others are making. So that's really across the fleet that learning happens.
Exactly. Any individual event like one car sees will be reflected in the performance of all of our cars across the fleet.
Wow, that is certainly a huge asset. And Aaron, you mentioned it, and I think Eamon, you also referred to it earlier, like the millions of miles that Waymo vehicles have covered now in years and years of testing and now public deployment. And I think, Eamon, you also mentioned some publications, the safety record of those Waymo vehicles that it's out there. So what are some of the key findings from these safety research papers regarding the Waymo driver's impact on the safety, in particular for vulnerable road users like people in a wheelchair, cyclists, pedestrians, vision impaired community members? So some of the safety records maybe that you can reference to give us a bit more of a feel like, how good is it compared to Sven driving a car?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that we've spent a lot of time in our safety research community thinking about how can we best represent the driver performance of the Waymo. And so what we do is we do an extensive amount of benchmarking of human driving. So, we look at drivers the average human driver in San Francisco or LA, and we think about how much they're driving and how often they get into collisions of different severities. We can then look at the Waymo driver operating in those areas, driving those miles, maybe in different parts of the city, and compare our performance. And what we've found is that kind of across all of our geographies that we operate in, over our first 96 million miles, so this is almost 100 million miles, the last several years of driving without a human driver in the front seat, we've had 80 to 90% reductions in crashes overall, of higher severity crashes. And then, like you mentioned, wheelchair users, perhaps the vision impaired, just general cyclists and pedestrians, we've seen reductions for pedestrians of 92%. So, right, over 96 million miles in the areas where we'd operate, we'd have expected humans to get in 35 more crashes with pedestrians than we've seen with the Waymo. Right, that's 35 fewer injured pedestrians. Wow. That's unaffected families now. So as we continue to scale and reach new communities and drive more miles, we're having positive safety benefits for all road users. Right, we're not just protecting Waymo vehicle occupants, we're thinking about others on the road as well, and how best we can serve them.
Wow, that is impressive, and well, hey, I mean, quite a contribution to the community, and so I'm also then wondering, how do you get input from the community? So how do you involve community members, maybe including those with assistive needs, disabilities, pedestrian safety advocates, and so on, in the testing and proving that these systems work, especially for those community members who have special needs. So how do you involve them? Is that something, I don't know, Lucas, can you maybe shed some light on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So connecting with the communities that we operate in is really core to our mission of improving road safety. And that's because the users of the technology we're building are not just the passengers who are hailing the car, but they're also the road users that the Waymo driver interacts with on a daily basis. And the needs of passengers and road users in these communities we operate in are very diverse. And to understand those needs, we need to partner with a combination of local nonprofits, disability advocacy groups, government organizations, and just everyday people living in the communities where we serve. And personally, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to meet folks in our communities because they are just as passionate about improving road safety as we are here at Waymo. And at Waymo, many of us are members of the disability community or have friends and family who are, which is really a driving factor motivating us to show up and continue to improve the experience of both writing in and interacting with the car. And we approach this with a lot of humility because no one knows your needs better than you do. This is why it's so important for us to learn from the communities where we operate. Specifically, we've conducted user experience studies, roundtable conversations, and listening sessions. And specifically for our blind and visually impaired community members, we've done a lot of user experience research studies where we've invited folks to come and either use the Waymo service as a passenger or interact with the Waymo vehicles as a pedestrian and tell us what they liked, disliked, and what they would want to change. And in addition to this, we partner with a variety of local and national nonprofits and disability advocacy organizations who are also very passionate about accessibility and road safety. And together, we're able to work towards creating safer roads.
Wow, that is really, really great to really include the community and this and seek the feedback, and good to hear that you also have people on your team who actually know what it's like to have accessibility needs and to serve those. To maybe also understand a little bit more, because not all our viewers maybe are that familiar with Waymos. What is it typically like when someone gets into a Waymo for the first time? Are there concerns that you are aware of, and if do they change over time, that people at the beginning maybe say, well, I don't know, driverless car, I'm not really sure, but how does their perception change? Or I don't know, and any of you might want to add to it if you can.
I can maybe give an attempt to this. I think, at least for myself, the first time I rode in a Waymo, I was very nervous. And I think what happens is over the course of the next 10, 20, 30 minutes, and over the course of the next several rides, it becomes incredibly boring. And that actually is our goal. We want this extraordinary product to be extremely mundane at the end of the day, just given how much safety and redundancy we want to build into it. And I think for me, in the matter of 30 minutes, I went from looking out the door, freaking out about the car moving around without a driver, to just kind of checking my phone and being really relaxed. So overall, I think that's kind of the goal we're kind of working towards as Waymo employees ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to make it a boring experience. That's what you want. Yeah, that is quite something. So also maybe related to this, the experience and especially maybe, let's say, for vision impaired community members, that I can't imagine getting into a car like this and there's no human driver. So I understand there's like a operator on standby that you can call. So any experience that you can share, maybe how these interactions work and how important they are? Lucas, maybe, yeah?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So there's several features of the rider experience that are designed with accessibility in mind. And one of the first ones is in the app itself. There are special features that help someone with a visual impairment actually find the vehicle. You can play a sound, you get like a little a thing in the app that helps you locate where the car is. And then once you're actually in the vehicle, all of that design is also focused on being accessible for someone with a visual impairment. And of course, there's also a rider support person that, if you ever have any issues, you're able to call into and talk to should you need to.
Great. Before we come to a close, I also wanted to get back to the safety aspect again, and maybe that's something for Eamon. So impressive safety record. So if you can maybe tell us a little bit more about your work, how to even further improve the safety of Waymo vehicles. Is there something that you can point to?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I'll sort of answer it in two parts. So one thing that I've really enjoyed about our safety record and how we continually improve is when we carry out research, looking into things and identifying potential risks, the product team that's implemented in the vehicle. So we did some research looking at the risk of cyclists being doored, right? Having a vehicle door opened into their pathway, whether it be in a bike lane or, possibly injuring them when sending them into the travel lanes. Right, as a ride-hailing company, we're constantly pulling over, dropping off, potentially interacting with cyclists on kind of daily basis in large frequencies. So we need to make sure we get that right. And so as part of that, result of that research, we added a safety feature to the vehicle so that when it's pulling over for a drop-off and the vehicle, using the sensor suite, detects that a cyclist is coming by, you get a warning in the vehicle, alert, a cyclist is coming by, please be careful when you exit. And we've seen that, play out and work and people have, social media have taken videos like, oh, Waymo told me there's a cyclist and then a cyclist appears nearby, right? And so it's encouraging people to act safely and think about that. So that for me has been, I don't know if that fully answered your question.
Oh, it's a great example.
But just an example of, a safety issue that,
yes,
maybe the general public might not think about that we've had to encounter and think about and, how we've worked to mitigate that as best we can.
Yeah. Which almost gets me to the closing question that I wanted to put in front of each of you here. So you're doing amazing work and safety record is really great, amazing technology that goes onto the vehicle and really working with the community that Lucas talked about. So if you have to think about it, what has been your greatest moment at Waymo? Really the one that you would point to, wow, that was simply amazing, unexpected, and anything that comes to mind? I don't know, and any of you, what's the greatest moment at Waymo? Aaron, you might think, or Lucas was nodding, anything that comes to mind? It's a little bit out of the blue, I understand that. Aaron, yes, please.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's not so much an individual task that we've done, but the day we opened up pretty much all of San Francisco to the public was absolutely a crowning achievement. I think we overcame a lot of technical difficulties to really enable that and to ensure that we were doing so responsibly and safely. And just being able to take a Waymo car myself from, say, a friend's place in Potrero to our office that's closer to the downtown core was so simple, but also like really meaningful to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is magic. I remember, I mean, it was April 4th, 2023 that I took my first driverless Waymo ride. I will say this, and it was like magic. I will say I've been following Waymo and before that Google Self-Drive quite a bit, but being in a car without a driver and it works at that performance level, amazing. I know, Lucas, Eamon, and anything to add? What would you point to? What's the greatest thing that you experienced? Lucas?
Yeah, I think it's hard to really pinpoint just like one single moment, but I'd say the transition from running all these millions and billions of miles in simulation and having confidence that we know our system is very safe, and then transitioning to oh, now we're driving millions of miles in the real world and we actually see the reality of that safety story play out. I think that's like the most rewarding thing, because we've spent so many years investing in building the Waymo Driver, and to actually start to see it scale and have like a real impact on road safety where we're operating is really incredible. And we've started to post like some of these like really incredible interactions that the Waymo Driver experiences, online, to Twitter, to LinkedIn, and those are the events that we see every day that are really the rewards of showing like, yeah, we really designed this system well and it's really performing excellently.
I can only confirm. I mean, that's what gets me still excited as an automotive engineer. You see it in the real world. It's not something that just is in the virtual world, but especially when it moves from the virtual world, as you point out, from simulation to our roads and neighborhood streets. That is amazing. Eamon, anything to add? Maybe safety perspective, like the greatest realization that you had or something?
Yeah, I think, and I meant to plug this before, but we make all of our safety data available publicly on waymo.com/safety. So I'd encourage any of the audience to please take a look at that. Interrogate the data yourself, look at some of our technical papers. But I think similar to Lucas and Aaron, a moment, and this happened fairly recently, the mayor of Chattanooga, Tennessee, unprompted, called for, oh, Waymo, you should come test in our city, right? And it's that desire, and others are seeing the benefits of the Waymo Driver and its effect on road safety and general public safety in these communities where we are operating today, and they want that for their own communities. People who come to San Francisco and go out of their way to take a Waymo as part of a tourist activity, right? Like, the future is autonomous driving and removing the human element from this public health crisis on our roads today, and it's happening in some communities, and we'd like to continue to expand that. So it's really cool to see that play out from the larger public, where places that want us to come to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is real, and great to hear that you're getting more and more requests from communities, municipalities to take benefit of this technology. So really, well, you know what, that gets us to the end of our discussion here. So it's been really great. And first of all, I want to thank you, our Waymo panelists, Aaron, Lucas, and Eamon, for a great discussion here. And we are really honored that we could provide this as some food for thought and further inspiration for Vista Center's mission in helping community members with those needs. And really the participation today with SciTech Global, a really great partnership that helped this discussion come to life here today. I learned a lot, and I'm certainly looking forward to my next Waymo ride, which I think will be this afternoon in Mountain View, California. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Bye now.